The Birds is Hitchcock's monster movie. It's just an unbelievably frightening movie.
The Birds really started a whole new way of looking at monsters. We never seen anything quite so gentle as a bird becoming a monster.
The Birds truly was taking a part of nature that we know and throwing it right at us and assaulting us with it.
People like Steven Spielberg looked back to Hitchcock and would recreate scenes out of his movie and really try and pay tribute to him. The monster was no longer about having some villain that had been created like Frankenstein or Dracula or the Mummy. It was now this thing that was right there in your backyard or in the tree right outside your house. So The Birds acts as a bridge between the classic monster movie of the 30s or the 50s to the monster movie that we see today.
Ever since the dawn of the motion picture, monster movies have offered audiences a way to process their fears about things in the real world without having to confront them too directly.
Monster movies are basically e-ticket rides. People get to confront the fear of death without actually having to do it. And the idea of being in a roller coaster and having your wits scared out of you while you know that the roller coaster is probably safe, not always, but probably, is a big appeal.
The monster movies really enable us to experience something that we, on a conscious level, don't really want to ever experience, but at a certain level, we want to kind of know what that's like.
It's fun to be scared, and we are kind of reassured in some ways that there are monsters out there, but that we can overcome them.
Smile, you son of a...
Monsters become especially popular at times of great social unrest. I don't think it's any coincidence that both Universal's Dracula and Frankenstein took root in the American imagination at the bottom of the Great Depression. And it's no mistake that Frankenstein is wearing workman's clothing.
Monster movies reflect the times that they're made in, and the Depression was depressing. And one of the ways to confront the big bad wolf was to see evil vanquished in these movies.
Hiroshima has set in motion an entirely new kind of horror cycle, science fiction horror.
There was this fear of nuclear weaponry was going to somehow destroy us because it was going to take all these small things that were tarantulas, for instance, and turn them into these monstrous things.
In all the kingdom of the living, there is no more deadly or voracious creature than the praying mantis.
Taking these little things that were in everyday life and outside the front door and making them into monsters just was terrifying.
The idea of the revenge of nature was very, very common, and without the science fiction cycle of the 1950s, I don't think Hitchcock would have made The Birds the way he did. The Birds isn't a science fiction film, but it certainly relies on that revenge of nature template.
I think we have to remember where The Birds came in Hitchcock's career. It came almost 3 years after Psycho, which to that point was the biggest box office success of Hitchcock.
When he has a hit this big, it changes the way people go to the movies. When Psycho came out and became a phenomenon, he became, I think, the most famous filmmaker of his era.
The clout that gave Hitchcock was pretty much the opportunity to do almost any movie he wanted. But Hitchcock, being the filmmaker that he was, decided that he was going to do something totally unique, totally uncharted.
And I think he chose a movie that would stretch his boundaries, that would give him an extraordinary challenge.
Hitchcock prided himself on the ability to create fear out of very ordinary circumstances, and it became almost a hallmark for him. In Psycho, he took a very ordinary motel room, took a woman and put her in a shower, and suddenly created this experience that people just were not prepared for. And The Birds was almost trying to take that to a next level, because he took something that was so common and so everyday, having these small little birds that were just pets for people that were in cages, and turning them into this evil menace was something that very few people would ever even want to tackle. But I think that Hitchcock knew that he had the ability to do that in a way that no one else could.
I think Alfred Hitchcock was attracted to birds because it was so unexpected that birds would become creatures of death, that they would become the scariest thing on earth.
Everything that he's chosen is atypical of a monster film. Most of it's in the daytime. Most of it is with benign birds. They're sparrows, they're starlings, they're blackbirds, or gulls. The ravens are the most horrific of the birds, but even they are not condors or vultures or hawks. What is most benign becomes the most threatening.
The Birds is a pared down version of a monster movie, in that there is no explanation of the mystery.
I think they were after the children.
For what purpose?
To kill them.
Why?
I don't know why.
I always liked that about the birds, that there was no explanation. The birds just had it, I guess, with humanity at some point, and they were gonna let us have it. And we did the same thing in Tremors. It's never explained why these animals come out, why they start attacking. And it's kind of fun not to have a reason for it.
The birds are simply a symbol of the tensions that are going on between the characters. There's all this unspoken tension going on because of Lydia, Jessica Tandy, the mother, judging these women. And the tension starts to grow between the characters, and the bird attacks escalate.
Hey!
The birds are a complete expression of the inner lives of our characters.
What happens when you run out of wood?
I don't know. We'll break up the furniture.
You don't know! You don't know! When will you know? When we're all dead!
Hitchcock was trying to show that if we are out of harmony, so nature is out of harmony. And I think as a visionary, and we would have to say that Hitchcock was, I think he wanted to take on a very huge task. It's just much more than a cheap scare. He's trying to say something. In the monster movie genre, that's very interesting.
The word monster comes from the Latin. It means an omen or a warning. It has the same root as demonstrate. Monsters teach us lessons. And so any disruption in the normal scheme of things is traditionally looked on as ominous. And monsters represent the dark side of the human personality.
One of the great scenes in the movie for me is the scene in the diner with all the different people, all basically blaming Tippi Hedren for everything that's happened.
I think you're the cause of all this. I think you're evil! Evil!
And the community fighting against each other while trying to fight a common enemy is not an uncommon theme.
Crazy to want to bring back the biggest find anyone's ever made? Mark, you're not going with me.
The same kind of thing happens in most horror films because there is a tension that's rising about how to deal with this seemingly impossible situation.
You see, they're headed right for us. Get him alive if you can, but get him!
There's usually what I call the angry villagers moment in a horror film, which comes near the climax, where the townspeople revolt with torches and pitchforks, or they turn against each other. The emotions really start boiling over. It's a moment of anarchy and chaos, which is ritually vanquished by the destruction of the monster. The traditional monster movie always is about resetting the natural order. But in The Birds, Hitchcock thumbs his nose at this idea of the vanquishing of the monster.
It has an ambiguous ending. What happens? Do they go away? Are they there? Do they attack? Which I found really groundbreaking at the time.
I think Hitchcock was trying to get to a deeper truth. It was not one of retribution so much as it was one of harmony. And at the very end, they are able to pull together as a unit and create some sort of hope. They're an incohesive group in the beginning and a cohesive group at the end.
Hitchcock didn't want to resolve the film. He wanted people to leave the theater and wonder why this had happened. He didn't want to give them a solution that was so easy, and saying, I'm actually not going to end this movie, so much so that I'm not even going to put the words "the end" on the movie. But Universal added the final credit saying that it was a universal release just to signify that the film had actually ended.
Shark!
The Birds may well have been the first film to make a seacoast resort town seem frightening, but it wasn't the last. There are strong echoes of The Birds in Jaws. Steven Spielberg was a great admirer of Hitchcock's, and it shows.
Steven Spielberg looked to try and create the same type of fear in something that we felt is very normal and everyday and American, as going to the beach in the summer and going into the ocean was suddenly this newfound fear that no one had actually thought about before.
The Birds and Jaws take something that is a part of our everyday world and create a monster out of it. It makes it so scary.
Spielberg studied and went to school on Hitchcock. The dramatic core of Jaws and the dramatic core of The Birds is essentially the same.
Through both movies, you think that this horrible thing that's happening to people is almost accidental or a coincidence, but when it does start to seem as if the monster is actually aiming to attack the individuals that you've gotten to know and you've gotten to like, then you start to feel a little more of fear associated with the film.
In both films, there's no reason for the birds or the shark to be behaving as they are. The shark seems to have an almost human intelligence, and the attacks are unmotivated. Nature is not abiding by the rules, and the onslaught of the shark has many parallels to the onslaught on the children running from the schoolhouse in The Birds.
It is impossible to embark on a horror film without being influenced by Hitchcock. When we were making Tremors, I would watch his films over and over and think, how did he achieve this amazing display of filmmaking technique?
I think every film made after Hitchcock by all of us young movie brats kind of have him with us. He's one of the true masters of cinema.
The Birds took the monster movie into places that we had never gone before. And I think modern day filmmakers today try and somehow capture the same level of suspense and fear, but you can actually see the themes and the references to Hitchcock in their movies.
I mean, here you've got a body of work that is endlessly studyable. And it's a legacy that will remain untarnished for another several generations at least.
Oh, Mr. Burns.
That is all for tonight. Please join us next week when we shall return with another story. Until then, good night.